what we will do is the person at this podium will ask their opponent a question, and the opponent will have 2 minutes to answer it, and then that opponent will ask this opponent a question, and this candidate will have 2 minutes. So this is the order. Okay, is that, everybody get it? Okay, so here's the order. We'll start with Council District number 4, and we'll have Steve Vincent here, and we will have Mary Jane Newton Davis there. And Steve will initiate the question, and then when you've given your 2-minute response, you'll ask the question. Second round will be District 2. We will have Jeff White at this podium, Steve Bueller at that podium. Third round will be Council at Large, and we will have Phil Conder at this podium and Lars Nordfeld at that podium. And we will conclude with the mayoral race, and we will have Karen Lang at this podium and Ron Bigelow at that podium. And can you see the minutes over here? You can see the timer okay? Yes. Good, so we'll start that way. Thank you.
I'm not really sure what to ask, but I'll try this question. I'll just ask, what do you think the city's role is in transit and transit-oriented developments?
Thank you for that question. Could I clarify, please? Do you mean what is the city's investment in mass transit right now or for the future?
Not their investment, but as UTA and UDOT continue to build transit systems, and how should the city treat the development around those transit centers?
Well, let me first say that I'm out on the streets a lot, either running or on my bicycle. Most of the buses that go by me are empty. I think the city should renegotiate their terms that they have with UTA and make sure that they're addressing the ridership, because I don't see a lot of people on those buses. I think they could, I think the city could probably negotiate something where they're sending the smaller buses out here. They'd be using less fuel. They'd be polluting less. Yes, of course we do need mass transit. It isn't very attractive to most people right now. I don't think citywide or valley-wide, because it's so expensive. Then possibly, if they sent smaller buses, they could lower the price of the bus fares. It would make it more affordable for most people. But I think that is going to have to come from our city. I think probably you folks on the city council, and I know you have a full agenda, but I would think that you could address that at some point. That would be my answer. I do have a question. I would like to understand better, and I have spent some time on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I do not understand why we have so many pawn shops in one concentrated area. We have one on 7200 West, and we have another one on 5600 West, and I think pawn shops and check cashing businesses are detrimental to the citizens and to the city's reputation. I think both of those businesses are pretty scary for any city.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm not a real fan of either of those. West Valley City was the first city to put a limit on the number of check cashing stores that were available in the city. And as a result of that, Mayor Wall called us a few years after we had implemented that and wanted to know why all the check cashing stores were moving to Taylorsville, and wanted to know what we had done. And we told him that we had put a limit on the number of check cashing places that could be in the city. And as far as the pawn shops go, we haven't done that with pawn shops, but we've had that discussion about doing a limit on the number of pawn shops that can be in the city as well. But most of that falls within a zone. If it's in a commercial zone where that's allowed, it's allowed. And so it's just a matter of making sure that we do the zoning correctly so that those issues are minimized.
Thank you.
Steve, you've said that the best way to raise taxes is use other people's money to do so. You voted to raise our taxes 18%. You have voted to subsidize private businesses, and it seems to me there's a disconnect between spending other people's money and raising taxes and subsidizing businesses here. Would you explain that for us?
Be happy to, Jeff. First of all, I think you've misstated what I said. I said the best taxes are those other people pay because I don't like paying taxes. Okay, so if we can encourage other tax dollars other than our own, I am in favor of that. I always do my shopping in West Valley City. I'm careful about that because I want those dollars to stay here in our budget rather than out in West Jordan or somewhere else. With regard to the tax increase, I struggled with that decision. We had a budget of about mid-60s, $66 million. We took an over $8 million hit in 1 year in loss of sales tax revenue. We can't function with less money and still meet our obligations. Obligations in debt service, which we can't negotiate and which we can't just decide not to pay, but also obligations to you. These are your dollars and obligations to you. Most of our payroll, or most of our budget, is payroll. Most of our payroll is police and fire. I had to decide whether to close a fire station and lay off police officers, and although that was a difficult decision, I decided that was more important than doing something that politicians would talk about, whether the tax rate was the right rate or not. Also, you have to understand the property taxes. An 18% increase was an 18% of our portion, which I think was $46 or something per household, which is still $46 over a year. Now, when we set a tax rate, it's not really a percentage of the value of your home. It's just a tax rate. If it's $26 million over the city, that's what we're going to collect, and we're going to collect $26 million forever until we raise that limit. And so immediately, the spending value of those dollars starts dropping as soon as we raise taxes because inflation keeps going up. So eventually, taxes have to be adjusted. It just has to happen because we can't just have $5 forever. Sometime we're going to have 10. Ready, Jeff? I have a real question for you, something that I've been curious about. First week of June, all of us went to the city recorder's office. In fact, there were more of us then because we've had a primary election since then. There were 14 of us, 14 candidates, and we all met with the city recorder and signed various documents to put our name on the ballot for this year's election. I'm sure you remember doing that, and it's not the first time that you've done that. One of the documents that most of us signed was called the Pledge of Fair Campaign Practices, which is part of the Utah Code the legislature gave us. It's a promise that we will conduct this campaign ethically, fairly, and truthfully. Most of us signed that pledge. You chose not to. Please tell us why.
It was quite simple. I read the pledge. There were a few things in there. One, I knew who my opponent was. We've known each other for several years, and I knew that Steve and I'll speak so the microphone. I knew that Steve and I were going to conduct this fairly, or at least I believe we will. I know I will, and I believe that Steve will. Secondly, there was a clause in that said that if anybody who supported me were to say anything slanderous against my opponent or their family, I was to publicly reprimand them. And I had trouble with that. Not because I have trouble with people, they should not be slandering other people, but I had a problem with saying I am in a position to control other people. I have instructed all of my campaign volunteers, there's over 50 of them, they all know where I stand, and all of them are good and decent and honorable people. none of them would break the spirit of that pledge, and I did not feel it was right for me to put my name on the line to say that I will control someone else. That's just not me. I believe that people have their right to choose. They can be taught what is good and what is wrong and choose for themselves. Then I can take them aside privately and discuss with them, hey, you can't do this. That's what I do with my children. I don't reprimand my children in public. I reprimand them in private where it does the most good. And that is why I chose not to sign the pledge. The time is right for Jeff White.
Me, right? Yep, okay. First, I'd like to say it's an honor to run with Lars. I think you're a fine human being, you're a smart guy. I think I'm a fine human being, I'm a smart guy, and it's good to have good competition in this. The main difference that we have, as I've kind of explained tonight, is our viewpoint on the city manager. So I'd like to address my question on that. So my question to you would be, would you support a city manager if the city manager condoned fraudulent police reports? And if you do, if the answer is, yeah, I would still support him, then I want to know from you, how bad does it need to get before you would publicly not support the city manager?
Thanks, Phil. I appreciate that question. The number one job of the city council is to hire and fire the city manager. We have a government where the city manager is the CEO who runs the city, and I see it as our job as a member of the council, as the whole council, is to hold him accountable for running the city the way it should be run. And if the city manager does things, as you suggest, that condoning fraudulent police reports, that's something that should be investigated, and if he's found in violation, then we should be looking for a new city manager. I think a really important thing is balance. There's always two sides to every story. My father often says there's no pancake so thin that it only has one side. And we need to look at both sides, and as a city council, to investigate any wrongdoing or any accusation of wrongdoing, and follow that to the end, and make sure that justice is served. Justice is something that's really important to me, and the integrity of the city is really important to me. And that's something that the city council should uphold and should require of their city manager. How bad would it get? That's a tough question. But if the city manager is doing things that where he's not being just or working with integrity, then as a city council, we owe it to our citizens to hold him accountable.
Thank you.
So I'll ask you a question, Phil. I wish that we had questions from the audience, because really this election is about you and what you want, and I hope that we will all listen more to you. So I was thinking, what would the citizens really want to know if they got to ask a question? And I thought that they'd just like to know what your top 2 priorities are and how you plan to implement them. So that's my question. What are your top 2 priorities, and how do you plan to implement them?
Great. It was a little bit addressed in the 3-minute part of, what's the vision, but I suspect your question is more of an immediate, not the long-term vision, but a short-term vision. I'm going to assume it's that way. I'm glad you addressed that the single most important thing that the city council does is hires, and we can call it fire or change, the city manager. Because we have a weak mayor form of government, that city manager runs the city. That city manager is not elected by the people, not accountable to the people, only through the city council. And when somebody's there too long, it's human nature to start pushing the bounds and feeling like you have more authority than maybe you really do. So, number one, I would
push for a new city manager. I think our city manager, Wayne Pyle, is a fine human being. He's a smart guy. Don't get me wrong. But I think he's been there too long, and I think we need that change in our city. That's my number one. My number two is economic development. And I spoke about that earlier as well. But on the short term, I believe there's technologies that exist that will help us better manage our economic development so that we are understanding what the economic impacts are to various companies that come into the city, what kind of benefits or incentives we can give to people, to companies to come into the city. I believe those are the two elements that have the most impact from the city council, is far and away the city manager issue, but secondarily, it's an economic issue for the city that we as a city council need to address and manage. That's
I agree with Lars, or whoever, that this question should have come from out there. But I have a good opponent, and my question is, why are you running for mayor?
Thank you for the question. This is one that often comes up as I go door to door as well. Why am I running for mayor? What could possibly cause me to want a job where there's so much thankless events that occur? Well, because of my background and makeup. Number one, I felt that there was a need for someone to come in and address problems. It's not to say anything against the current city council. They're very capable. But when you have a problem like the black eye we've gotten with the police department, it needs to be fixed. And if you fix it from within, you have a challenge because it doesn't have as much credibility. Why did we go outside to get a police chief? We had capable people on our police force because it lended some additional credibility to solving the problem. I felt that if I came in from the outside, that I could help with that problem. And it doesn't matter what the solution is. It will have a little bit of additional credibility because it's coming from someone who's not been part of the problem. And because of my experience in state government, that will help, I believe. And also, I found the third reason after I got in the race, and that is because I believe in people. I believe in the people of West Valley. They are a great people. They need to be listened to. We need to encourage them to speak up and help us run our city. And I will do everything I can to help them have more of a say in what goes on in the city. It's going to take a lot of work, but I believe that that's what I should do. And that's why I'm running. Thank you for a nice question. And before I ask my question, I will tell you that both my wife and I, obviously you can understand, were glad that I survived the primary. But we were equally glad that Karen Lang survived the primary as well. If this city is going to have a mayor, I think that it deserves one of the two of us. And I can speak nothing but good things about Karen. So let's ask the other question. Well, I guess it's only fair, maybe I'll just use the same one. Why are you running for mayor? It seems to be the most often question.
Thank you, and thank you for the kind words. One of the biggest reasons I am running for mayor is my belief in the city. I had a lot of my customers ask me to run for mayor, and at first I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm doing city council, I'm great. But then the more they asked, and the more they asked, and gave me reasons verbally, then I took it serious and really started to look at myself and say, what can I give as the mayor? Running my own business, I shouldn't say my husband and I, running our business, we have learned a lot of valuable lessons. And one of them is to have a plan. When I won District 3 in City Council, there were talks in our meetings about, well, we need this, and I said, where's the plan? Where is our long-term plan of maintaining the buildings we have, maintaining our streets, maintaining our parks and our facilities, the fitness center and such. We didn't have, as a city, a written out dollar plan of what our future was. Without a plan, you don't get very far. When you wake up in the morning, you need to be working towards something. So I asked for, and we received as a council, a departmental plan of what we need, and now as a council, we need to break that down and make it happen with the dollars we have and have a plan for our future. And that was one of the biggest reasons as a city council member that I decided to run for mayor, is to help direct that plan and implement it so that we can maintain what we have with the monies and the funds we have.
Let's give these fine candidates another round of applause for a job well done. So that concludes our Meet the Candidates as far as the dialogue up here on the podium. The meet and greet out in the room here will continue until 9 o'clock. So if you want to ask further questions, pick up material about positions that they have, you can do that up till 9 o'clock this evening. Early voting at City Hall begins October 22nd, so just here in a couple weeks you can begin to do early voting at City Hall during the weekdays, not on weekends. And you can do that between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. and you can cast your ballot then. The general election will be held on Tuesday, November 5th, and the polls will open as they typically do at 7 a.m. and until 8 p.m. And then we can all stay up all night and see who wins. One of the things I get to do as the chamber president is I watch who I get to work with for 4 years. As voters, you will choose one candidate in each race. So each of the races that we had today, so we have mayoral race, Council District 2, Council District 4, and the Council at Large. You will cast 4 total votes, one for each of them. And so you'll vote for the person that you want to see in office, and the person with the most votes gets to be in office for 4 years. So we're excited for that. You can also check the city's website at wbc-ut.gov, or you can contact the city recorder's office, who oversees the elections in the city, at 801-963-3203. It's been a pleasure.
Alex, can I correct you? In some of the districts, they'll only vote for the council at large and the mayor.
That's true, because, yeah, thank you. For clarification, so everybody in the city votes for council at large and the mayoral race. If you live in Council District 2, you will vote for District 2, council at large and mayoral. If you live in District 4, you will vote for District 4, at large and mayoral. So thank you for that clarification, Russ, I appreciate it. The Chamber of Commerce, we're glad to be able to represent West Valley, Taylorsville, and Kearns, and I'd encourage you to shop locally. We like you to shop in West Valley City. We've had a number of great ribbon cuttings recently with Neaters. There's a new movie theater opening up in West Valley. There's the Target, 5600 West has been a busy corridor. There's Winco and Dickey's Barbecue. Dunkin' Donuts is open now on 56 West, so we're grateful for all these great businesses that are coming to our city. And we have more lined up. You can check our website at chamberwest.org for a calendar of different chamber events and ribbon cuttings that we have. Yes. Okay. And I've just been reminded there's other races, Granger Hunter Improvement District and other improvement districts also, so your ballot will have more than just city folks. Thank you. So with that, thank you all for coming tonight. Please drive safe. The roads were wet coming over. I'm assuming the storm is still here sprinkling a little bit, so please drive home safely. Appreciate your involvement in spending your evening tonight learning about the candidates that are going to run the city for each of us, and appreciate your presence here tonight. Thank you again very much.